Welcome to my channel. My name is Rhea, and in this video we are going to talk about Saturn retrograde. So I'm going to talk about what Saturn retrograde is in general, and then I'm going to talk about what it might mean for your rising sign, sun sign. So let's get started. Now, Saturn is the planet of decisions. It's the planet of hard work. It's the planet of restructuring things, right? It's a planet that likes structure. It's a planet that likes to build for the long run. That's what Saturn is. And Saturn enters a particular area of our chart, right? The third house, the fourth house, etc. after 28-30 years. And when it enters a particular house, it sets that house in order, so to speak. It restructures it, right? It takes matters associated with that house and restructures it and sets the base for the next 28-30 years. And it enters a house after 28-30 years, which means it's restructuring that house after 28-30 years for the next 28-30 years. Very simply put, Saturn is restructuring that particular area of our lives. And Saturn retrograde is a period where the pressure to restructure that part of our lives kind of eases off when Saturn is direct, which it has been since October 2021 up until June 4th, 2022. There's immense pressure to restructure that part, right? To decide, to work hard, to move forward. And we feel that pressure, we feel it. But when Saturn goes retrograde, the pressure eases off slightly. It's more a period of review. It's a break, so to speak. It's a break to review all the work we've done, right? All the work we've done in restructuring that part of our life. Is it the right path that we're on? Is this the best way to restructure? Or is there a better way, right? Is this the best decision, or is there a better decision? So these are the themes of Saturn retrograde, of reviewing the decisions, of reviewing the hard work, of reviewing the restructuring process of a particular area of our life. And during Saturn retrograde, we can also receive the fruits of our labor, right? Because Saturn is a taskmaster. Imagine restructuring a certain part of your life, whether that's your home life, whether that's your career, whether that's your business partnerships, after such a long time. It's stressful in a way, right? It might be for the best, but it's stressful. So Saturn is a taskmaster in that sense that it really asks us to step up and make these changes that we might not be willing to make, right? Because making changes usually is difficult. It's uncomfortable. So Saturn asks us to get uncomfortable to get better. So that's what Saturn is, and during the retrograde, this is the pressure that eases off, and it's also a period where we receive the fruits of our labor because we've done so much work, right? We've done so much work when Saturn is direct. October 2021 up until now, we've done that work. We've taken those decisions. Now it's saying, let's review. Let's review. Is this the best decision? Let's review. Is this the best way to work? It's also saying, okay, you know what? You put in a lot of work, time for some rewards. So that's Saturn retrograde, broadly speaking. And now I am going to talk about where Saturn might be depending on your rising sign. And I would recommend watching your rising sign first and then your sun sign. And Saturn currently is transiting the sign of Aquarius. It has been since 2020, right? In March of 2020, it moved into the sign of Aquarius, and then it retrograded back into Capricorn, and then finally it entered the sign of Aquarius on December 17th, 2020, right? Since then, it has been in Aquarius and will be up until March 2023. So now let's talk about where it might be for your particular sun rising sign, and these are the basic themes that you're working on restructuring in your life, right? That you're working on changing, that you're working on building the base for the next 28-30 years. And it could also be that you're letting go of something associated with this particular area of your life that I will mention. So now let's get into the signs, and I'll start with Aries and Aries rising. So Aries, for you, Saturn has been transiting your 11th house. The 11th house is the house of your social circle. It's the house of your hopes, goals, and dreams. It's the house of scientific progress as well, right? Social activism. All these are themes of the 11th house. So since 2020, Saturn has been asking you to take another look at your hopes, goals, and dreams. Are these the goals that you want? Yes, you wanted this at some point, but is it still something that you want? Or has it changed? Or it could be something associated with your social circle. Now, these are not your immediate close friends. It's more like the acquaintances that you have, the groups that you belong to, that sort of thing. So Saturn here is asking you, are these groups still relevant to you? Is this social circle the best social circle for you? Or has something changed and do you need to move on? Do you need to join other organizations? So that's what Saturn is asking. And if you're a scientist or into science and into innovation and invention and social activism, then Saturn is asking you to take a second look at that as well since 2020. Maybe you worked very hard in this area. Maybe you worked very hard on a scientific project that you have going on or a social activism project you have going on. So it could be something like that as well. And during this retrograde, these are the themes that Saturn will ask you to review. Is this the best decision you made? You made this decision regarding your social circle, Aries. Is it the best one for you? Is this the right group for you? Think about it again. Give it a second thought. Or it could be, is this the best way to work on your invention? Is this the best way to work on this thing you're really passionate about? And because it's also about social activism, right? So is this the best way to go about that? Or do you need to change something? So that's what Saturn is doing, and now it's asking you to review those decisions, all the work that you've put in to move forward. So Aries, a lot of focus for you on your social circle, on the groups that you belong to, on your hopes, goals, and dreams in science, tech, innovation, social activism, if those things apply to you. Now let's talk about Taurus and Taurus rising. So Taurus, for you, Saturn has been transiting your 10th house, right? And the 10th house, like the 1st, 4th, and 7th house, is one of the most important houses. And the 10th house is the house of your career. It's your public image, it's your social standing, it's your business, right? And Saturn here since 2020 has been asking you to take a second look at these matters, at your business. Is this the business that you want? Is this the way you want to run your business, or can you do it in a better way? So that's what Saturn is doing in your 10th house, Taurus. A lot of focus on your career, a lot of focus on business, a lot of focus on your public image and social standing. And during the retrograde, right, you might be reviewing certain business decisions, certain decisions associated with your career. It could also bring rewards associated with your business and career, right? If you worked really, really hard, then it might just bring you the fruits of your labor concerning the house of business and career. Now let's move on to Gemini. Gemini, Saturn has been transiting your 9th house, right, since 2020. The 9th house is the house of higher learning. It's about wisdom. It's about traveling to foreign lands. It's about higher education, right? College degree level education or beyond that. So that's what the 9th house represents. And Saturn in your 9th house can also bring focus to your belief systems, because that's the 9th house as well, right? Because it's wisdom, it's knowledge, and wisdom and knowledge do influence our beliefs, right? So Saturn here in the 9th house is more of a subtle impact, I would say, as compared to the 10th house for Taurus. But for you, Gemini, there's been a lot of focus on restructuring your 9th house, right? Your belief system, how you acquire wisdom, or maybe you've developed an interest in studying something, right? Gaining some more knowledge, or maybe you've become interested in the higher questions of life and that sort of thing. So Saturn here works in more of an internal way. If you're not going abroad to study, or if you're not taking up a course for higher education, that sort of thing, if you're not doing one of those things like traveling abroad or learning something, then it's more of an internal thing where it's focused on your beliefs, where it's focused on acquiring wisdom. Maybe you've suddenly become interested in reading these books that, talk about the meaning of life, for example. So that's what it's doing in your 9th house, Gemini. And this retrograde will ask you to review these matters. If there's a degree that you've been wanting to pursue, right? Saturn may say, is this the right degree? Are you sure you want this? If you've been wanting to travel abroad, right? Saturn will say, is this the place that you want to go to? Think about it. Is this the right decision? Or is there another place that you'd like to go to better? Or if it's something associated with wisdom and books and that sort of thing, and you've been reading a lot and acquiring knowledge, then Saturn may help you assimilate that knowledge and use it better. Right? So that's what Saturn in the 9th house is all about. Now moving on to Cancer and Cancer rising. Cancer, for you, Saturn is in your 8th house. The 8th house is a lot of things, right? The 8th house is the house of transformation, generally speaking. It's the house of our psychology. It's the house of intimate relationships. It's the house of investments, right? Investments are also a part of the 8th house. So for you, Cancer, Saturn since 2020 has been asking you to restructure this area of your life. It could be something internal in your psychology, right? It could be a healing that you're going through. It could be a deep, deep transformation you're going through. Saturn in the 8th house can also ask you to look at how you deal with intimate relationships or intimate relationships in general. It can ask you to take a second look at how you make investments, right? How you do those investments. So it can do that as well. And Saturn here can also bring an interest in the occult. The 8th house is the occult things of life, the hidden things of life. So maybe Saturn transiting the 8th house can bring an interest in the occult, or if you're already interested in that, it can change up or restructure how you approach the occult sciences and things like that. So that's Saturn in the 8th house, but the 8th house by itself is the house of transformation. A lot of internal transformation also happens with the 8th house. So it could be a deep internal transformation for you, Cancer, with Saturn transiting your 8th house. And during the retrograde, this is the area of your life that will come up for review. Is this the best decision regarding your investments? Is this the best decision regarding your psychology and mental health? Right? Is this the best decision regarding this intimate relationship you have in your life, Cancer? Is this the best decision in how you want to pursue something in the occult? Right? So that's what Saturn in the 8th house asks you to review. And it can also bring rewards, right? If you worked really hard on transforming, on your psychology, on healing, on, say, learning about the occult, Saturn can, really bring that healing, or it can help us deal with that transformation better. Or if you've been studying hard in one of the occult sciences, then it can give you more clarity and a reward in that area as well. So that's what Saturn in the 8th house is doing for you, Cancer. Now, moving on to Leo. Leo, Saturn is in one of your important houses, right? 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th are the most important houses in my opinion. And the 7th house is to do with others. It's your business partnerships. It's your marriage. It's your spouse. It's your mother-in-law, father-in-law, anything legal, right? The 7th house is legal matters as well. So it's legal matters, it's your legal relationship, spouse, mother-in-law, father-in-law, business partner, and it can also be the house of business. So Saturn in the 7th house since 2020 is really asking you to take a second look at these things and restructure them, right? Maybe you've changed business partners, Leo. Maybe maybe marriage or something about your marriage has been in your mind, right? That could be another possibility. Or maybe you're thinking about your business, because the 7th house can also be, yes, the 10th house is business, but the 7th house can also be indicative of business. So that's what Saturn has been asking you to restructure: business partnerships, and legal relationships. These could be legal issues as well, issues with like lawyers and that sort of thing. Or it could be something with your spouse. And if you're already married, then Saturn in the seventh house can make you restructure the marriage itself. And what I mean, that's not necessarily negative, right? And what I mean by that is it can maybe improve certain things, or change up the dynamics in a way that the marriage works better as well. So it's not always that Saturn comes and does things for the worst. No. So these are the themes of interest for you, Leo: marriage, legal relationships, legal issues, business partnerships, and business itself. Now moving on to Virgo and Virgo rising. Virgo, Saturn is in your 6th house, and the 6th house is the house of our health. It's the house of our day-to-day habits, right? What time we wake up, what time we eat, how we work out, that's the 6th house. It's also to do with our job, right? The service job that we have, where we serve others. It's to do with that as well. So Saturn here, Virgo, has been asking you to restructure your routine, your habits, something about your health perhaps, or your job even, right? And especially if you're in one of those jobs that is, say, in the service sector, say healthcare professional, or makeup artist, or fitness trainer, or a nutritionist, that sort of thing, right? So it can ask you to restructure that as well. And I'm a Virgo rising, and Saturn has just entered my 6th house very recently, because I'm a 19-degree Virgo rising, and I can see how it's changing things up for me, right? I'm wanting to change up my routine. I already have, in a certain way. I wake up a little later now. I used to wake up really early. Now I wake up a little later, and I mentioned this in one of my other videos as well. I've changed my exercise routine, and I've even changed up my diet. So it's bringing a lot of changes, and I think it's for the better, right? Because I do think it's for the better. So that's what Saturn has done for me in the 6th house, and it doesn't really feel that difficult in the 6th house. So it just moved there. So let's see what happens now. Now moving on to Libra and Libra rising. Saturn for you has been transiting your 5th house, and the 5th house is the house of pleasure, of hobbies, of creativity, right? Being creative is a matter of the 5th house. Children are a matter of the 5th house. Love, romance are a matter of the 5th house. 5th house is like love and romance, but once you get married, then it becomes like the 7th house. 7th house is your marriage. 5th house is the romantic partnerships that you have. So Saturn here, Libra, if you already have children, and if you're already married and all that kind of stuff, then Saturn in the 5th house can really make you focus on hobbies, on being creative, on pursuing a hobby or something like that. So my dad is a Libra rising. He's a Libra sun as well, and Saturn has entered his 5th house now since December. So he's been very focused on music since then. He's learning to play he plays the guitar, but he's been practicing a lot, and a lot of the time that he wouldn't spend on practicing and playing the guitar, now he does that. So little changes like that, right? It's very subtle, but he's been playing music since he was 20 something or even younger. So but now is when he's really giving it time and relearning certain things and focusing on that. So a lot of focus for him for music and creativity, right? So it could be that you become interested in the arts as well. 5th house is also associated with drama and acting, right? It's ruled by Leo, and I also feel the 5th house brings a lot of interest in films, right? Films especially. So it could be that you suddenly get more interested in watching more movies. It could be that you become interested in filmmaking or performance or acting or anything like that as well, 5th house. So basically, to sum it up for you, Libra, Saturn in the 5th house is about focusing on love, romance, your children, creative pursuits, performance, acting, a love for movies, cinema, that sort of thing. And let me think if I'm missing out on anything. Yeah, 5th house is also, Saturn in the 5th house can also teach us to love ourselves, right? It can do that as well. So I just went through Saturn in the 5th house. because Saturn entered my 6th house very recently, and Saturn in the 5th house made me focus a lot on my creative skills. I worked a lot on my creative skills, and for me, it made me kind of systematize and organize all my creative things, right? I used to have all these skills, but I really didn't know what to do with them. So in the past 2.5 years, Saturn has helped me kind of give structure to those skills in a very creative way. So that's what Saturn has done for me in the 5th house. And yeah. Now moving on to Scorpio and Scorpio rising, Saturn is in your 4th house, and the 4th house is one of the most important houses, along with the 1st, 7th, and 10th. And the 4th house is the house of our home, right? It's the house of our deep, deep, deep emotions. It's the house of our family. It's the house of our close friends. It's also the physical home that we live in, right? It's also our roots. Roots could be the country that you belong to, right? The state that you belong to, where your ancestors are from. All that is 4th house. 4th house is also where we learn to nourish ourselves. It's about self-care. It's about going within, right? It's about cooking as well. The 4th house is about cooking. And Saturn in the 4th house can have a few different effects. It can really ask you to restructure your deep, deep emotions, right? Saturn in the 4th house could also mean that you change homes. And I know a person, very recently, Saturn's entered her 4th house and she's moving. So the process is on. And Saturn here can also ask you to restructure how you take care of yourself, right? It can really ask you to restructure how you do that. Maybe you need to focus more on yourself, on taking care of yourself, on nourishing yourself. So Saturn in the 4th can make us do that as well. So there's a lot of focus on restructuring matters that are to do with our inner being, our inner world, to do with our home and family. It could be moving to a different location. It could be resetting up the home, right? It could be a change in the dynamics in the home. So anything to do with the home. And it could also be to do with cooking, right? The 4th house is very intimately connected with cooking. So maybe you become interested in cooking. So it could be something as simple as that, right? It need not always be very intense and very big. It could be a new interest in taking care of yourself. Maybe you sleep a bit longer. Maybe you cook for yourself now. Things like that can also happen with the 4th house. And from, I don't remember the exact dates, but before the 5th house, Saturn was in my 4th house, and the 4th house for me was the most difficult transit for Saturn. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm just saying that if you are feeling a little, whatever, not the best, then Saturn's going to leave soon and then it's going to get better. So Saturn in the 4th house for me really made me introspect, right? It really, really cleaned up, I can say, all the things that I hid internally in my emotions. It also sparked an interest in cooking. So I used to cook, but that period when Saturn was in my 4th house, I became really interested in cooking, and I would cook every day. So that's another thing that happened. And a lot of internal change, I would say, for me. A lot of internal change in my emotions and cooking, and yeah, that's what. But my 4th house is extremely loaded, right? I have my Sun, I have my North Node, I have Uranus, I have Neptune, all in my 4th house. So Saturn in the 4th was very eventful for me, probably because I have so much energy in my 4th house. So that's what Saturn in the 4th did for me. It really made me introspect and deal with emotions that I hadn't dealt with in a long, long time. And it made me focus on cooking, cooking in more of a structured way, I would say. Saturn is structure. So I even, anyway, I won't go there. But yeah, so a lot of that happened for me. So for you, Scorpio, this retrograde might be a review of the decisions you've taken regarding your home and your family. It might be a review of the decision you might have taken to move locations or move in general. It could be a review of just anything you've done regarding how you nourish yourself, or it could even bring rewards. Maybe you've been trying really hard to move, right? Maybe you've been trying really hard to move houses. Saturn retrograde can make that happen. Or maybe you've been working really hard on your inner being, on dealing with these emotions that are going on. Saturn retrograde can finally make you feel like, okay, you've dealt with that. So that's Saturn retrograde for you, Scorpio. And it's nothing to fear, because Saturn can really put things in order. So if there's a home situation that's not in order, Saturn can actually put it right, set it right. And moving on to Capricorn, I missed out on my own sign, Sag. Moving on to Sag and Sag rising. So Saturn is in your third house right now. And the third house is to do with your thinking, right? It's to do with how you communicate. It's also the house associated with information, right? Information that we read, the information that we receive, the information that we send out into the universe. It's a lot to do with communication. It's a lot to do with our thoughts. It's a lot to do with our immediate environment, right? How do you keep the furniture? How do you keep your room? That sort of thing. It's also a lot to do with your siblings, younger siblings especially. It's also to do with your peer group. That's the third house as well. And if you're, say, a writer, right, third house is really important for you because it's about writing. If you're into social media, the third house is also social media. So that's the third house. And Saturn in the third house can ask you to restructure any one of these things, right? Maybe it's asking you to restructure how you communicate. Maybe it's asking you to restructure your office or your home, right? Maybe you need to change up the furniture or, do bigger changes to your immediate environment to feel comfortable. Or maybe you've suddenly developed, not suddenly, Saturn is slow, but over the past 2 years or so, you've developed an interest in, say, writing, right? And now you're writing. So it could be something like that as well. Or it can even bring a focus to social media, right? Maybe Saturn says, okay, you know what? Get on social media and do these things. So that's what Saturn in the third house can do, Sag. And I'm a Sag sun. And for me, I feel Saturn is actually, in the past 2 years, it has brought a lot of focus to social media. For me, surprisingly, I would never use social media. Never. Nothing against it. I'm just usually a private person, so much fourth house energy. So I didn't really know how to use it. I'll be honest. But suddenly, I think since 2020, 2021, more like it. But yeah, you can say 2021 beginning, you can say. I've become really active on social media. It's strange, but see, it's not negative, but it's happening and it's work. It's work for me to do this. Don't get me wrong, I'm really happy doing it, but Saturn's, asking me to look at this area, change how I communicate, change how I interact with the world, and it's made me create these social media accounts that I never thought I would have because I really didn't know what to say, but now it's happening. So it could be something like that as well. And it does feel a little challenging because it's out of my comfort zone, right? So Saturn does that. It takes you out of your comfort zone, but that doesn't mean it's negative, right? I'm very happy and very glad that I started these accounts and that I do these videos. I'm very happy about that. But initially it was very uncomfortable, right? But Saturn will say, no, put in the work. It's okay if it's uncomfortable. Just do it. So Saturn in the third house can bring about changes like this. So for you, Sag, there's a lot of focus on how you communicate, your communication. If you're into writing, then that sort of thing. Social media is a big theme. So is your immediate environment, your office, your home, your immediate surroundings. So is your relationship with your younger sibling. So that sort of thing. And Saturn retrograde will ask you to review these things. It'll ask you to review, are these the best decisions for your social media? Is this the best way to communicate? Or is this the way you want your immediate environment? Or it could even reward you, right? It could even reward you in these areas. It can say like, okay, you worked very hard on changing up this office space and all, and now finally it gets completed. Simple things like that. Now moving on to Capricorn and Capricorn rising, Saturn is in your second house. The second house is the house of wealth. It's the house of your possessions. It's the house of your finances. It's also the house of your appearance. It's also the house of your values, your skills, what you value. But primarily, it's about material wealth, material possessions, skills, and appearances, the second house. So Saturn here can ask you to structure and streamline your finances, your material wealth, your skill set, your appearance even, right? Maybe in the past couple of years, you've really changed up your appearance. It could be something like that as well. It need not be deep, intense stuff, right? Or it could be a financial matter that is highlighted for you, Capricorn. So this is the area of your life that Saturn has been asking you to restructure since 2020, and now during its retrograde, right, this is the area you will be reviewing. Saturn can make you question, is this the best financial decision? Is this the financial decision that will make me stable? Or is this the skill set that you really want to learn? Or you've changed up your appearance. Are you sure this is the way you want to look, or do you want to change it up again? You know, I know it's in astrology and all, we don't usually talk about appearances and material wealth and finances, but it's part of astrology, right? And I have to say, so Saturn in the second house brings a lot of focus to finances, to what you value, what your values are, your skills, and your appearance, right? Especially the face. The first house is more the body, the second house is more the face. So yeah, a lot of focus on that, Capricorn. And this is what you're going to review during Saturn retrograde. Matters of finances, matters of material wealth, matters of your skills, and matters of your appearances. And now moving on to Aquarius, Saturn is in your sign and has been since 2020. And Saturn in your first house, Aquarius, makes you the focus, right? Maybe you really need to change up who you are. And I know it's not really changing who you are, but the first house is more like how the world sees you, your external identity, so to speak, right? That's what the ascendant is, the first house. That it's how you present yourself to the world. It's how you make sense of the world, how you interact with the world. Since it's the first house, Aquarius, these are the themes that Saturn is asking you to restructure. A lot to do with you, who you are, how you present yourself to the world. Could be your appearances, could be your identity in general, right? The first house is our identity. So it could be anything to do with our identity. And before this, Aquarius, between 2017 and 2020, Saturn was in your 12th house, closing out your past, closing out many things in your lives. So since 2020, it's more like, you're restructuring and rebuilding your life, your identity, who you are, in a certain way. And Saturn retrograde will ask you to review this. It's going to ask you to review, is this the identity for you, right? Is this in alignment with who you are? So that's the focus. And if you've been working very hard on reconstructing, restructuring who you are, then Saturn may reward you. So that's for you, Aquarius. And I know Saturn in your sign is not the best feeling. I went through Saturn in my sign between 2015 and 2017, Saturn in Sag. So I know the feeling. I mean, all of us know the feeling, because at some point Saturn does enter your sign. So I know, but focus on growing, focus on building your identity, focus on changing and evolving, right? And that makes Saturn easier. Now, for you Pisces, Saturn is in your 12th house, right? The 12th house is where we close out a cycle, right? A cycle of 28, 30 years where when it comes to Saturn. And this 12th house is also the house of our deep, deep subconscious mind. It's also the house of escapism, right? Anything that we use to escape is the 12th house. It's also the house of spirituality, meditation, yoga, that sort of thing. So Saturn in the 12th house can make you close out the past in a very powerful way, right? The past of 28, 30 years begins to kind of close out when Saturn's in the 12th house, and it's not necessary, everything you've built in the past 28, 30 years is going to go away. No, it's more like the internal closing out of the past, right? Subconscious pain, subconscious stuff, subconscious fears that came about in the past 28, 30 years tend to kind of reset themselves. Also, if you are into spirituality and meditation, it can bring a lot of focus into that. Maybe you start doing yoga, or maybe you start doing meditating, or for me, it's not necessary that if you're spiritual, you need to do yoga and meditate. It's really not necessary. It can bring an interest in spirituality, right? And how you connect with that spirituality is really up to you. Like for me, astrology is what makes me spiritual. Writing is what makes me spiritual. I do meditate on and off, but it's not something that really truly connects me with spirituality. I do stretching and yoga after my workout, but by itself, and I know, but by itself, yoga has never connected me with spirituality. Other things have, and I have nothing against these things. If yoga and meditation work for you, that's great, right? But all I am saying is there's no one way of being spiritual, right? Anything and everything can make you spiritual. So it can be an interest in spirituality, it can be a deeper connection to who you are, and it can be if you are into escapism, and these days escapism is through anything, right? It could be through food, it could be through media, it could be through addictions. So if that's something that is relevant to you, then Saturn may ask you to fix that. It has been asking you to restructure that since 2020. So that's another theme associated with the 12th house, right? So Saturn here for you Pisces is closing out the past, perhaps developing an interest in spirituality in some way, or touching upon the themes of escapism and addictions if those apply to you, and a lot of work on your subconscious mind. So that's the 12th house for you Pisces. And Saturn will ask you to review these things. It's going to ask you, hey, we had to work on this thing that you used to escape. Are you still working on it? How's it going? Right? Or it may say, okay, you know what? You've developed this interest in spirituality. Is this the right way that you're connecting with your spirituality? So these are the kind of questions that come up. Or it can, bring up the past in a certain way for you to review it and let it go. So that's also another theme of Saturn in the 12th house. So Saturn retrograde is a period where these particular themes associated with our sun rising signs will kind of be in focus. And I just wanted to talk about Saturn retrograde in this video. Primarily, I wanted to talk about Saturn because wherever Saturn is in our charts, we feel that the most, right? We feel that the most. The daily energies, the weekly energies are extremely important, and we feel those as well. But I feel where Saturn is particularly in our charts, that's the area a lot of our focus goes. And why is that? And I think it's because Saturn is the ruler of this material world, right? It's the planet of this reality, so to speak. So wherever Saturn is, that's where our material world focus is. That's where our focus on this material world goes, right? Wherever Saturn goes. If it's in your 4th house, it's in your 4th house, then 5th house. And Saturn, a lot of the times we fear Saturn. And I'll be honest, I've gone through a lot of Saturn. I went through Saturn in Sag 2015, 2017, and then in Capricorn. And I have so much Capricorn. Everything has progressed into Capricorn. I will tell you what I have in Capricorn. So I have a lot of Capricorn right now, especially in my progress chart. Mars, Mercury, North Node, Uranus, Neptune, my Sun, everything is in Capricorn, and this is my progress chart, right? But in my original chart, I have a lot of Scorpio, Sag, and Capricorn. I have Venus in Scorpio, and Venus has just been squared. It has been in that Saturn-Uranus square, right? Uranus has been opposing it, Saturn has been squaring it. My Pluto is in Scorpio. I have in my natal chart, I have Mercury, Mars, my Sun, my IC in Sag, and now all that's moved to Capricorn. So wherever Saturn has been since 2012, it entered Scorpio in 2012. I've had planets there because my chart is like everything is at the bottom. It's all together, right? So since 2012, Saturn has been going through all my planets one by one, and so has Pluto, right? I was born with Pluto in Scorpio, and Pluto has transited the sign of Sag, where I have so much energy, and now it's at the end of Capricorn, where I have more energy. So I understand what it means to go through a Saturn transit, and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction of 2020 was exactly on my progress sun, 22 degrees of Capricorn. So I understand Saturn and I understand Pluto because I have been through too many of Saturn-Pluto transits, and Saturn-Pluto conjunction not only conjuncted my progressed sun, it also squared my natal moon at 22 degrees of Aries, right? So it's been a lot of Saturn, a lot of Pluto. Oh, and I forgot to mention my Saturn is in Aquarius, so I just went through my Saturn returns as well. So a lot of Saturn, a lot of Pluto, and now in 2-3 years, Pluto will conjunct my natal Saturn. So that's coming up. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we fear Saturn, right? We fear it. But after going through so much Saturn and Pluto, I feel that we should not fear it, because in the moment it feels challenging. In the moment it feels uncomfortable. But when it's done, right, it makes you better. It makes you grow. It makes you more mature. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. And I would say don't fear it, but work with it, right? If Saturn is in your 5th house and you know about it, then work with it. If it's in your 10th house, then work with it, because that's the way to handle it. If I had known back in 2012 Saturn is going to go through all this, in a way I'm happy I didn't know, but in a way if I had known, it would have been easier for me to deal with this. Because right now, whenever I go through a difficult transit, say Uranus opposing my Venus, Saturn squaring it, I know it's happening, right? I know. So I'm okay with it. I know if I'm feeling stressed, I know, okay, right now it's very intense. I'll just let it pass, and it will. Or, for example, Neptune just squared my sun, right? Neptune at 24 degrees. Actually, the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction squared my sun. My sun's at 24 degrees of Sag. And I knew that was going to happen, and I was a little apprehensive, I'll be honest. I was very apprehensive. But when it happened, it didn't feel that bad or anything. In fact, I would say it was positive. It was positive because the sun is my identity, right? And since then, I find that I am not as guarded as I used to be. So in a way, it's helped me open up my identity, my consciousness, my soul in a certain way. I have lost that feeling of being very held back. I've lost it to a certain degree. I still have a lot of it, but I've lost it to a certain degree. So it's not always negative, right? Saturn, Pluto, any planet. It's not negative. It's how we deal with that difficult situation. And one thing that astrology has taught me is that this too shall pass, because it will, right? Often, and what used to bother me is that years and years of Saturn, right, without knowing it. So I didn't really I always wondered how long it would be like this, how long I would feel stuck, or how long I would feel this sense of pressure. And then I realized that it's only temporary. Even if it takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, it's going to move on. So for me, that was another big thing with astrology, that energies are temporary, right? If there's a struggle, that's temporary. So that's how it has helped me, and I hope it has helped you as well. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in one of my other videos now. Have a great day. Bye.